Meanwhile, we should talk about sanctions then. Let's talk about sanctions. So again, this is the other big piece of this. This is the economic side of all of this, which is how are sanctions doing? Well, the European Union announcing that they are, in fact, moving towards more sanctions on Russia, right?
Yes. And in fact, they continue to discuss whether or not gold should be sanctioned, what other goods can be sanctioned. And now the head of the European Union is saying, hey, look, we don't think these sanctions were ever really to stop Russian attack, excuse me. Instead, we were just looking to crush their economy. And that is our end goal.
Yeah. So the EU is now admitting that the goal of Russian sanctions is not to crush Russia's military moves, but is in fact there to actually stop the Russian economy and to hurt the Russian people, right?
So is that working, right? It's an interesting question because we see that Russia has been able to ink deals sort of around Western business. In fact, just yesterday we reported that Russian gas company Gazprom has said, we don't feel like we really need to send any oil down the Nord pipeline if we're going to have this back and forth, right? This is so they
Gas.
declared
There's no oil that goes through
gas,
yeah,
excuse
gas.
me. So they declared a force majeure, which means that if they are willing to cancel a contract while they've been having warnings that they will eventually be canceled, then they have already budgeted that they don't need these markets as much as these markets think, right?
So let's go through this. This is what the EU says, okay? I have it here on my screen here if you want to take it, Philip. The embargoes imposed by the European Union against Moscow are intended not to stop the fighting in Ukraine, but to wreck the Russian economy, the bloc's foreign policy commissioner, Josep Borrell, said in Brussels on Monday. Borrell also announced an EU ban on Russian gold exports later this week. The EU sanctions will not stop the military activities in Ukraine, but ought to create a lot of problems for the Russian economy, Borrell said, adding that the EU cannot afford sanctions fatigue. Russian President Vladimir Putin counts on the fatigue of democracies with sanctions. It's not easy, but we must continue to put pressure on the Russian economy. Our European societies must not abandon this policy, he said. Okay, so how's that working out for us? Right? I mean, the predictions, right when these things were announced, we were on this show highlighting how ridiculous this was and how Russia is massive, has enough reserves, food supply, natural resources, gold, an economy, has great partners, China and India, and we'll get to Iran here in a moment. They had all of the infrastructure to sustain themselves and to protect themselves. Tulsi Gabbard, right as this was unfolding, and those Russian sanctions were happening, absolutely nailed it, and people mocked her for it. Kamala Harris specifically mocked her when she said this. Watch.
These sanctions don't work, whether they were put in before or now or later. These sanctions don't work. What we do know is that they will increase suffering and hardship for the American people. And this is the whole problem with the Biden administration. They are so focused on how do we punish Putin that they don't care and are not focused on what is actually in the best interests of the American people. So when Biden stands there and looks directly into the camera and says, you know, defending freedom will cost us, what he really should be saying is looking directly into the American people's eyes and saying, this will cost you, because these sanctions are not going to cost him or Kamala Harris or the power elite in this country, even the power elite in Russia. It is the people who will suffer, the American people, the Russian people, people here at home working hard every single day, facing those drastically increasing prices at the gas pump, facing increasing costs at the supermarket, impacting our supply chain. The hardships that people are dealing with every day now, with Biden's sanctions plan, we're only going to see that continuing to get worse.
But that's not to say, right, that Russia is not hurting. If you look at the MOEX, which is the Russian stock exchange and the stock index, it is down, right? And it's not to say that, oh, everything's just fine there. Go ahead and put up this chart, right? Look at the plummeting in March of MOEX, and look how it's sort of struggling along, and it is losing market share, losing value, right? Just like Western.
But is that
Go ahead.
Is that kind of the same as the, like, over here where it's like all the politicians always want to focus on the
Yes.
stock market, but it isn't an example of what's actually happening to the people.
But the point I'm trying to make, if I could just finish it, is not that this is indicative of the fact that sanctions are working. I don't think that's the case at all. What I think is that Russia has always budgeted for this pain point as it transitions from Western partners to Eastern partners. And I think that's what's happening.
Okay, perhaps. Yeah, and you're right, probably right about that. And we're certainly seeing the relationships that they've been building over the past few months in India and China.
Years.
But
Yes.
but it's been accelerated over the past few months, of course. On the MOEX thing and what David brought up, he said exactly what I was going to say, which is when Trump was out there spouting, and we don't take any sides on this in this show. I mean, we're independents, and we're not Republicans or Democrats. When Trump was out there spouting, he said, when you point to the stock market and say, look at the stock market. He loves the stock market. He's a New York guy. He loves Wall Street. And how many of you are really connected to the stock market, right? The point is that just because IBM is doing well doesn't mean that you and your small business are doing well, right? It's a disconnect. So when we see the MOEX plummeting a little bit in Russia, are Russian businesses, how connected are they to the average Russian person? I'd be curious, how many people here are Russian who are watching the show right now?
Right. So that's only
one
metric, right? But if you were to look at the strength of the ruble.
Can I finish my thought now? I was going to say, how many people are Russian who are watching right now? Let us know in the chat. What is life like for you right now? Like, is it difficult at the supermarket? How are prices up? Are you suffering the same way that Americans are suffering right now? Go ahead.
I don't remember what I was going to
Okay.
Oh.
Well, I was gonna make a point really quick to say, like, if you look at the U.S. dollar, okay, let's say that we had all of our stocks and everything were down and everything, but the U.S. dollar was still strong, then I think that would be a better indicator. And the ruble is actually more powerful than it was before all this started. So I think that would be a better indicator than the business stock market.
Yes, the ruble absolutely is almost an inverse of, I'm sorry I didn't bring with me, but almost an inverse of that chart. So as MOEX plummeted, and again, that's sort of a global exchange, right?
Right.
So this is indicative of global interest in the Russian stock market.
Right. So people are like saying, oh, we're not going to invest in Russian companies right now, and that's reflected in the MOEX. Okay, well, is that reflected in then like hardships for the Russian people?
Right. But then you look at the value of the ruble, and absolutely right, it's up because Russia has been able to negotiate new terms of their contracts based on receiving in their own currency. So, we're not applauding these things. What we're doing is pointing out that the tough talk from the West may not actually be as tough as it seems because it's not having the desired effect that politicians are telling us that it is.
By the way, we're married,
think about
so we can do she can tell me to don't interrupt me. But make sure that you
think about when I'm mad.
Yeah, make sure you smash that like button in the chat right now, because I see a lot of new people here. Smash that like button if you're new here and subscribe. Go ahead about Putin.
No problem. So I think Putin is probably sitting there laughing because if you look at what we're doing, we're pumping at like $59 billion already. We're going to commit to like between $5 and $9 billion a month to send to Zelensky. So Putin is just watching our dollar go lower and lower while his ruble goes higher and higher. And it's just like he has to be sitting there thinking, are they really this dumb?
Yeah,
like,
the euro is
he's
doing
destroying
the
us
exact same
without
thing.
even having to drop a single.
Deadl's Guns in our chat says the ruble is doing better now since the Cold War. Yeah, the ruble is hit an all-time high. The ruble hit an all-time high, and the deal that we'll get to this in a moment, the deal they just made with Iran, where you're going to be paying with rubles. Like this is, I mean, again, so, India is going to be partnering with you and like paying in rubles. Like you're going to be using the Russian currency. Again, guys, this is the decline of the Western hegemony. You're watching it unfold. This is exactly this is all part of the plan, by the way.
That's why the West is fighting so hard, right?
I saw a documentary. I saw a documentary many years ago that was talking about how Libya and Iraq and these other countries were talking about using the dinar to trade oil, and that was the whole reason that we got involved in these countries, because we just have to hold on to the petrodollar. But Russia is powerful enough that like it looks like they can start to get rid of the dollar as the petrodollar, and there's not going to be much we can do about it because other than our military, what do we have?
Right.
Meanwhile, President Biden went to Saudi Arabia to sort of let the powers that be there know that he is not down with the idea of the petro yuan, right, which is the Chinese currency attached to petrol. And he didn't seem to make all that much headway for asking for much oil, but he may have sort of just let him know, we still want petrol to be traded in dollars. We don't like this whispering about yuan. Let's shut that down right now.
Yeah, how's that going to work out for us? It's not. Meanwhile, Americans are suffering big time. I mean, the prices continue to skyrocket. So here's chicken prices. Now, chicken prices, eggs are going skyrocketing. So you might have noticed this. Take a look. We'll play this.
Sundays in Sacramento means shopping at the farmer's market. It also means carrying more cash, especially for chicken.
Since COVID started, the prices for our feed and labor have skyrocketed. It's gone up significantly.
With inflation, the biggest thing that we have right now across the board is our feed.
Poultry farmers Jeremy Fish of Honest Fish Company and Dan Jones with Islote Farms say the cost of feeding the chickens is starving their budgets.
It's the only thing as far as overhead costs that, they keep going up and up and up and up and up and up. Like it's tripled within the last 2 years.
I'm surprised, by the way, that Jeremy Fish didn't become like a fisherman. Like he went to the chickens.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm tired of all the fish in my life.
He wanted to break
chickens.
with convention.
So that's
at least he's stuck
price.
with white meat.
That's true. He's like the tilapia. But then also the White House over the past 24 hours. This was amazing to watch the White House. I mean, it was actually. I mean, it's so disgusting, and I can't. First of all, the propaganda that comes out of these White Houses is just disgusting. The White House taking a victory lap on the slightly lower gas prices. So now we're seeing a decline, right? President Biden, by the way, he's had 3 days now where he's had no scheduled public events. Like it's been silent. Like, where is he?
Maybe he needed a haircut.
They needed to rehydrate him after those days in the desert. Like, they're like, no public events after Saudi Arabia. Just go into your chamber. We're going to rehydrate you.
I
no
mean,
bike rides,
you know
nothing.
how those international flights are murder, right?
Yeah,
On the human
I really
body.
feel bad for someone who has a full king-size bed in a jumbo airliner.
I'm just saying.
I'm sorry.
It's very dehydrating.
When we fly, it's a little different. When he flies with a king-size bed and puts on that white noise and he's knocked out, he doesn't know what time zone he's in. I don't feel badly for him
If
at all in that
only.
way. But anyway, so the White House is now taking a victory lap on these slightly lower gas prices. Jared Bernstein, of course, White House economic advisor, out there talking about we should thank the president for this. But reporters were not having this. Watch this ridiculously.
You're having it both ways, Jared, because when the gas prices go up, it's got nothing to do with the president. When we see some decline, you want him to get the credit.
Look, I think that there's no both-way thinking here at all.
Right, but we're going to take credit. We should thank the president for this, which is what you just said, and yet, but you also tell us that he's not responsible for gas prices. The president of the United States is not responsible for gas prices. We've heard this time and time again, right? So here's Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary, on these gas prices being pushed on that point. Listen.
We have seen gas prices go down in the past 34 straight days.
Aren't they still
go down
$2 a gallon higher than when you guys took office, though?
First of all, we have to look at the impact of how we got there, right? You think about the war that Russia has taken on in Ukraine, an unmitigated war, and a war that is brutal and that has had an effect on the price gases going up, almost $2. We have talked about that endlessly. And also, we are also in a once-in-a-generation pandemic. So there are outside factors that has led to gas prices going up.
Total lie. That's total bullshit, right? Gas prices were already going up and were already that high before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. And you want to unpack all of this. You want to go down this rabbit hole of like the pandemic piece and trying to drive people away from, fossil fuels towards green energy. I mean, yes. So this was all Putin. And it was all coronavirus.
The only thing Jean-Pierre has taught me is how good of a liar Jen Psaki is.
Yeah. She did it with much. See, with Jean-Pierre, she just flips to a binder section and she just reads right from it. Like she was asked today about baby food. We still don't have baby formula. Like they're still dealing with the baby formula crisis. And instead of like knowing that where we are on that, she's like, hold on, let me, and she just literally read right from prepared remarks in a binder.
But she has a very soothing way of delivering this information that is like,
To who?
I don't know. It's a bit. It comes off to me, and I don't mean to be pandering, but like the way she talks
condescending.
It
comes off as condescending.
It's almost like, okay, class. Like she's got a very elementary school teacher way about it. Like, well, we have already talked about this, boys and girls, and so we're going to go back to this, and I will remind you this way, right? So it comes off as unthreatening, even though I'm like, I don't agree with that unmitigated qualifier about the war.
Well,
right?
It's definitely nicer than Sean Spicer. Remember when Sean Spicer,
right?
Man, what a disaster that was, right? He comes out. He was White House press secretary for the very first day. He's like, listen, it was the most people ever that came to a White House, to a presidential inauguration. Shut up. I'm going to go on Dancing with the Stars. Yeah, I guess in that way, it's less Sean Spicer.
It's because it's such a like, yes, boys and girls, I'm going to teach you this now. That way, then you miss the words that you don't agree with. Because I'm like, wait a minute. Who says the war is unmitigated? You? But it's just like a sing-song way. So we have to pay closer attention. We can't be lulled by her nice
and I guess
stage
with Psaki,
presence.
Yeah, and with Psaki, when you walked away, at least you felt like you got an answer. You didn't, but you felt like you did. With Jean-Pierre, I don't feel like I ever actually get an answer.
Yeah. Do we ever get answers from these people? I mean,
no,
to be honest,
we do not. But it's like, how well can they form the circle?
Yeah.
And Jean-Pierre doesn't really get around to the full circle. Psaki would just be like, she ran circles around him.
Wow.
Yeah. It must be a really depressing job to be a White House reporter, because you're like, I'm going to push for something I'm not going to get. All I'm going to get is spin today.
All you are is a propagandist. You're literally out there lying to the American people. Like, when you go home at night, do you feel good about yourself? And then when you go onto a career at MSNBC, or you go onto a career at CNN, or you go onto a career at Fox, or wherever the hell else these White House press secretaries go, they go to the mainstream media. They go to the billionaire-run mainstream media. That's what happens, right? Can you feel good about yourself at night? Like, honey, you did a great job today lying to the American people. Thank you, honey. Did you tuck our kids in? I had a long night tonight. Why are you home so late? Because I was busy lying to the American people all day. I hope you raised our kids okay. I hope the nanny is taking care of our children today. It's infuriating, because that's all that job is. I mean, is literally lie after lie after lie. Meanwhile, President Putin flew to Iran. So while all of this is only his second trip since the war began, this was a three-way summit between Iran, Turkey, and Russia. And on the agenda, of course, they're talking about the 2015, back on that 2015 nuclear deal. They're looking at the war in Ukraine, but they're also eyeing up gas deals. So
grain deals.
And grain deals. So, yesterday how we talked about, of course, that Gazprom, which is the Russian state-run gas company, right? I don't know the exact ins and outs of every
detail. It is a state-run.
State-run. Of course, the Nord Stream pipeline flowing to Germany is going to be basically shut down, right? So it's going to be a dark, cold winter in Europe. So then today, this just broke before the show, actually. They have now announced that Iran, if you want to take my screen here, Philip, Iran's NIOC and Russia Gazprom have signed a $40 billion investment deal. One day after, they've now shut off gas to Germany and Europe. Now he goes to Iran, and they lock up a $40 billion investment deal.
So clearly this was in the works, while, Russia sort of, like I said, could budget that they didn't need the money from this one Nord pipeline, could afford to cut off European customers because they've had these relationships being fostered for a long time. So for us to think that we can sort of suddenly hurt them when they haven't had other side hustles going on, right? Oh, I got this side hustle. What is it? Iran.
Right. It's China. It's India.
It's China. Well, meanwhile, this morning, some headlines out of the Wall Street Journal were that Germany is scrambling to get 20% more oil from Albania, right? Like they're looking to these smaller markets and saying, well, what can we piece together with spit and glue? Because they really didn't think they were going to have to do this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.